Hello. In this video, we consider the relevance of ethics and corporate social responsibility to performance measurement and performance management. Organisational performance is a much broader issue than simply the production of profit. In order to monitor and measure our performance in relation to any ethical code or principles we choose to adhere to, and any corporate social responsibility programme we might choose to roll out, the strategic management accountant will need to adapt the performance measurement system to incorporate these aspects in order to give them visibility and in order for performance to be monitored and controlled. Ethics involves morality. It involves the difference between right and wrong and principles and standards of behaviour. It affects what the organisation does, how it does it, and who does it. It could be argued that as a stakeholder in society, organisations have a moral duty to behave ethically. Organisations that behave unethically may well end up suffering commercially as well. For example, a clothing manufacturer may decide to make use of a factory in a deprived location where labour is cheap. Keeping costs down may appear to be consistent with the director's duty to maximise shareholder wealth. However, if it became public knowledge that this was happening and conditions were extremely poor in the factory, it could have several consequences. Customers may refuse to purchase clothing, losing revenues. Employees may be demotivated, and applicants for new roles may be put off applying. Suppliers may be reluctant to supply to the business for fear that their reputation may be contaminated by association. Investors may object, making it more difficult to raise funds. Organisations seek to discharge their ethical duties using several methods. Some organisations have their own explicit code of ethics that form part of the terms and conditions of employment. Where this is the case, KPIs need to be set around these key areas to highlight their importance and to measure our performance in relation to those ethically important areas. For example, if pollution is avoidable and we consider it our ethical duty to reduce pollution, by measuring pollution and setting targets for its reduction, we will encourage adherence to this ethical principle. Most organisations have a morality implicit in their culture. Management should nurture implicit morals to ensure they are consistent with organisational ethical principles. This can be done by careful recruitment and sending messages to staff, for example when transgressions occur. Ethics can also be managed on a professional level. Many professions have their own ethical codes, and members are expected to follow them. All the professional accounting bodies have their own code of ethics. Not only does this benefit the profession, this benefits the organisations where those professionals work, as their work is held to a relatively high standard. Should there ever be a conflict between a professional ethical code and an organisational ethical code, this can usually be resolved by taking the higher ground and sticking to the higher moral principle of the two. Corporate Social Responsibility Programmes, or CSR, is an organisation discharging its duties as a citizen of society. Ethics is a dimension of CSR. An organisation may, for example, make regular charitable donations or allow employees time off for charitable purposes. Adopting a sound programme of corporate social responsibility helps to ensure an organisation's reputation is preserved and enhanced. A decent CSR policy will strengthen the brand and build sales, attract high-quality staff and supplies, attract ethical investors, strengthen the brand, and reduce costs. For example, using less packaging not only benefits the environment, it's less expensive for the business. The case for CSR seems to be fairly clear. However, there are arguments against it. The funds belong to shareholders, and generally shareholders have not given permission for those funds to be discharged charitably. Perhaps the funds should be paid to shareholders as a dividend to allow them to decide whether or not they should pursue their own social responsibility goals. CSR allows directors to feel they are adding something to society, but it's easy to do this with someone else's money. Also, companies have not been democratically elected, so what right have they got to decide who gets helped and who isn't helped? If a company has an explicit CSR policy, then the strategic management accountant should ensure that the goals and tasks highlighted in that policy are embedded in the performance measurement system of the organisation. This will facilitate making individuals responsible for some or all of that policy's execution and ensuring that it happens. It also allows the organisation to report to the broader stakeholder group on its progress towards corporate social responsibility goals and targets. There have been some notable CSR failures in the past. For example, the BP Stillwater Horizon disaster damaged BP in many ways, not just financially, but its reputation and its ability to invest elsewhere. Although not strictly a failure of its explicit CSR policy, BP suffers potentially from having a corporate image that portrays it as irresponsible. Volkswagen and the emissions scandal is another similar example in many ways. In summary, most organisations have an identified approach to ensure that they behave ethically and have a programme of corporate social responsibility. In the modern business world, they don't particularly make a business stand out as they are the norm. However, because of this, any CSR failures or any incidences of behaving unethically are increasingly visible to stakeholders who vote increasingly with their feet.